Hey, hello friends, welcome to this video. In this video, let's see different ways of using range function in Python. Okay, before Python 3 was introduced, there was a function called xrange, which is similar to range, but xrange generally xrange is a function which returns a generator. Okay, it returns a generator object. The reason why xrange was used is in xrange code execution is quite faster. Okay, it's quite memory efficient. When it comes to range generally returns a list, but it uses more memory when compared to xrange. So the code execution using range was generally slow whenever range function is used because the usage of memory is quite high, right? So whenever we work with huge set of data, this range function was not much efficient. Xrange was helping the coders in very helpful way. But the reason why range is much popular is because it's because of its rich in because it's quite rich in features, and it has a lot of inbuilt functionalities which you can use. Okay, but whenever you work with a smaller set of data, this range is quite efficient, and it's very much useful during programming. So now let's see what are different ways in which how we can use range. Okay, so first we will start with the traditional method of how we can use range function. Okay, range start comma stop. Okay, so okay. So as a name depicts, range is nothing but if we want to print or get some elements within a particular range, then we use this function. Okay, I will give an example for x in range. This is the range function, and range, say if I want to print numbers before 10, so now I'm giving the range as 10. Now if I print x, okay, now if I run this, now if you see, it has printed me elements starting from 0 to 9. So this is one of the default methods which we can use, in which how we can use range function. Okay, so this is the first example. Similarly, we will see, okay, now we will use start and stop technique. Like, so now we started, we just now provided a range value up to 10. But in case if you want to specify range values, like for example, before 3 to 10, then you can use this syntax. So now if you see, it started from 3 and with throw values up to 9. So this is another way of using the range function. Um, to enhance it much more further, another method which we can use is, we can define the the differentiation value. Like if that's something called step. So here if I provide a value called step, it's nothing but it will print the values within range in this particular difference. So here the 2 is the difference, so it will print all the values from 3 up to 10, with range value of with the difference value of 2. Now if I run this, if you see, now it started from 3 and 5, 7 and 9. There's a value difference of 2. Okay, so this is another way of using a range function. So what we now saw is an incrementing range incrementing value, because it incremented the value from 3 to 10 in a in ascending order. But if you want to decrement it, there's another way of doing it. So say if I want to print 10 comma 2, and if I want to print it in a descending order, like in the decrementing order, then we can use something called minus value. So here I'm using minus 2. So if I run this, yeah, if you see, it started from 10 and it's decrementing the value in the range of 2. Okay, so this is another way of using range function. Okay, so now if you keenly note, all we have used is just the integer values. Okay, so whatever we used inside the range is just an integer value. uh, let's see if we can use float. Okay, so float. So if I provide value say 20.0, okay, float is not supported in this range. If you see, float object cannot be interpreted as integer. Okay, so only integer values is allowed. So I know I just to let you all know, I just provided a wrong value. Similarly, if you want to write for characters also, characters is also not supported. In case if you want to check it, say if we want to try provide values from A to Z, I'm just providing Z. Again, if you see, the string object cannot be interpreted as integer. Okay, so this including characters or float values is not supported in this range function. Okay, now let's see another example of how we can use range function. Now we'll use how to use using for loop with Python range. So let's declare a simple list. Okay, say let's call it as list one. So generally, whenever you work in a real-time programming, right? So you will have a list of values, or you will have an array where you will store a combination of few values. Okay, in this situation, this kind of range, using range function might be very helpful. So I will declare some examples. Say BMW. I'm just declaring few car names. Say Maruti. Let's say Audi. Let's say Ford. Okay, so now I have list of um, car car manufacturers. Okay, so I just want to provide all the. So I'm doing a mistake here. Let me correct it after I run and show this. So now if I run this, it says list object cannot be interpreted as an integer. Similarly, um, uh, in our earlier example, we saw character and float was not supported, right? Similarly, list is also not supported. But if you provide the length of that value, now you can use a for loop to iterate over the list of elements. Now, if you see, yeah, oops, 0 1 2 3, what mistake am I making here? Yeah, so I'm just printing the values. I'm just printing the x values, where else I need to print list one of x. Now if I run this, oh, it's not, sorry, it's not a callable function, it's just an index value. Now if I run this, yeah, now you see all the items within my ranges printed. So this is another way of using range function. Here we saw how to use for loop with Python range. So this is one of the way, and another way is using um, so if you want to um, print a list using a Python range, we can use this method. So using Python range as a list. So I'm just gonna keep it very simple. I'm just gonna use a simple print function to depict this example. So if you want to generate a list from the range, you can simply use this particular function. So if I now run this, yeah, this is, if you see, it returned a list object. Okay, so if you want to return a list from using a range function, this is one of the simplest way you can do it. And the next method is, now you might have a range, a list of elements within a range, right? But what if you want to access any element within that range? You can use index. Okay, so next let's see using index to access range elements. Now, so let's see. Yeah, okay. I'm just declaring the value. So now I'm using range function. Say I have list of range up to 10. Okay, so values up to integers up to 10, and I want to print four syntax. Okay, so print value. Okay, now if you see our the value at the fourth position will be 4, so it printed the value. So now using indexing, you can access the elements in the range. Okay, so this is another way of how you work with the range function. And next method, let's see how to use using range inclusive. Okay, if you have keenly noted earlier, whenever we used the range up to particular integer, it returned value less than 10. Okay, so if I declare value for I in, for example, I will for I in range 10, print I. Okay, now if I run this, what happens is it prints the value up to 9 only. It does not include the final range value. It does not include a range value 10. Okay, so in certain situations, in when working with real-time problem solutions, you might be put in a situation where you want to include the final element in the range also, right? So in that situation, let's see how we can include the final element, the range include the final element in the range, which is nothing but range inclusive. Okay, so let me try to declare something called mm, let me define a start element. Start element can be 0, and the stop element, say, uh, let's take an example of printing values up to 10. Okay, 10. So I want to increment it in the step value of 1. Okay, so now since I want to include the final element, I'm gonna do what is an action called, I'm just gonna increment the add the step value. Okay, so here the stop value will be 10 and the step value will be 1. So 10 plus 11 will include the final value as well. Okay, so here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loop through my range start comma stop comma step. Okay, now if you see, my start will have value 0 and stop will have the value final value, which is nothing but 10 plus 1 will be 11, so it will include the final element with the range of 1. Okay, so this is, if I print it, you see, up to the 10th value, the final value is also printed. Okay, so this is another way of using including the final element in the range. Okay, final index in the range. So this is one of the method. And finally, let's see how we can merge two range functions. Okay, uh, say for example you had range of elements from 1 to 5 and another range of elements from 10 to 20. Okay, now if you want to merge these two outputs, how can you do that? So using merge output of two range functions. Okay? Merge output of two range functions. So here in Python we do not have any default method to merge the range functions, but if you go look outside, like there's in iter tools we have a method called chain, which will help us to merge these two range outputs. So let's see an example of how we can do this from iter tools. I'm just importing chain method. Okay, import chain. So here let me declare a value called merged value equal to chain. Now I'm going to use this chain method. What- so I want to merge two ranges, right? So first I'm going to include my first range. So range, let me have values integers up to 10. Okay, so this is one range, first range. Second range is range of um, okay, say from 20 comma 30. Okay, so this is another way of so this is syntax for merging the uh, two range outputs. Okay, now let me loop through it for I in merged print. Now let me run. Now, yeah, now if you see, it has merged it to the two outputs of the range function. So first one started, so first we have range 10. So the output value is printed from 0 to 9. 0 to 9. Yeah, so 0 to 9 here. And second range is starting from 20 to 30. So it will print values from 20 to 29. Finally it will be 29. So it has merged the two outputs of range function. Okay, so this chain method in iter tools will help you to merge two range functions. Okay, so this is all what I have as part of this range tutorial. In case if you have any queries, please put it in the comment section. I will try to answer it as soon as possible. Thank you.